traditionally construction's been a little bit slow on the uptake for change, but I think there are so many new things coming through now, and the young people effectively that's really what it comes down to in a project management position. It does sound a lot like we're building things all day and, it's all out there on tools, but it's actually, there is a big shift in a lot of my larger sort of clients moving towards more tech-based systems. A small part of me hopes for a big change with AI. I think there's a lot of tasks that we do in project management that could definitely be replaced by AI, and I'm looking forward to.
What if walking away from a six-figure salary and a high-stakes job was the key to building the life you actually want? Today on Building Doors, we meet a man who did just that. Luke Crouch swapped radar screens for construction sites, transitioning from air traffic control to project management in one of the boldest career leaps we've ever featured. But this isn't just a story about change. It's a masterclass in adaptability, risk-taking, and why diverse career backgrounds might be the very answer to the construction industry's skill shortage. From managing McDonald's stores to navigating airspace to now building infrastructure, Luke's journey proves that the path into construction is anything but linear. And maybe that's exactly what the industry needs. Whether you're thinking of making a bold move yourself or you're an employer wondering where the next generation of talent will come from, this episode will challenge the way you think about potential. Welcome to Building Doors. Welcome to the Building Doors podcast. I have been absolutely fascinated with your journey in a really positive way. From McDonald's stores, air traffic control through to project management. I think your adaptability and versatility really showcases what is possible in construction. So take me through to, I want to know when the decision was made for you where you went, I want to move into construction, how that process, unfolded.
Oh, well, I don't think it was sort of an overnight thing, but there was a bit of a trigger moment. I was working for air services doing air traffic control for about 4 years, just over 4 years, I believe. And it was a very bumpy journey with the organisation. And somewhere along the way, things were just not really vibing anymore. The work is fantastic, but the organisation itself probably just needs a little work. And I was stuck in Melbourne for a very large portion of that when my family and things were based in Brisbane. And I was looking for a sort of a way to come back home. And I sort of just started looking around and wasn't quite sure where I was going to end up. I think I looked in probably dozens of different areas and tried to find a way where I could apply some of the skills that I'd learnt over, a few different careers. And the one that sort of kept popping up every time I went looking was the construction industry. I had a very small exposure to it early on in my life. I had my mother owns a bathroom business where she sells just the PC items, and I sort of worked in the family business for a few years, sort of post-graduation from school, and while I was doing uni and looking at a few other things. And I just sort of, I really loved it. I got a lot of exposure to mostly the plumbing side of things, but, a lot of people building houses and things, and I saw sort of the way that, construction works on a very light sort of level. And so when I, many, many years later, started looking again for a new sort of path, there isn't really a clear air traffic control to something else. No. There's quite a unique space. But a lot of the skills you gain, work under pressure and decision-making and, those sorts of skills, it's things that I could apply quite readily in the construction industry, especially in the project management space. So I started looking. I spent, probably about 3 or 4 months looking for a role. I found it quite difficult. A lot of rejections as you sort of, go to interviews and people ask, this isn't something you've got any experience in. And I was often looking for sort of entry-level positions because I knew that I was taking a step back and, I needed to sort of reprove myself when I changed careers. And I got a few close ones, but they just never really worked out. And I persisted and managed to see an old ad online for a job for an entry-level position in sort of a construction project management. It was sort of a cadet position or a junior project management trainee sort of position that a company was looking for that wasn't really advertised anymore, but it was an old ad. And I called the company and I said, oh, look, I've seen this ad. I looked the company up online. I really liked sort of the website and sort of the vibe I got from the company sort of prospectus. And, sort of started cold calling, finding people I could talk to, and ended up getting a hold of the phone number for the director for the Queensland branch of the business. And, he said, all right, well, let's just have a chat, meet up. We met up. We had a good chat for about half an hour. And he sort of flagged the same concerns that every previous employer flagged. Oh, you don't have the experience in this space. You don't have the degree in this space. It's not really something that, you're looking for. Plus, I was coming from a background where I was paid quite well. And, the experiences and skills that I was bringing meant that, the expectations, I think, from a lot of employers was that I would be expecting a lot more from them. And, I used that sort of meeting with Clark, who was the director of the Queensland branch for Flexum, to, sort of put my pitch and say, look, I'm here to start afresh and, let's take it back to the beginning and I'll show you what I can do. And here I am. It's been nearly a year and a half now with Flexum and, it's fantastic. I love it.
So I want to talk through the resilience. I talk to people a lot of times that go, I've tried applying, I've tried Seek, I can't get through. What I like that you talked about then is you've got to stand out, you've got to try a different approach. You're trying to get to the decision maker. You're trying to circumvent the being against hundreds of applications in a sea of applicants for a role. Was that something that you started out doing, or did you start to sort of realise, geez, I'm not going to get through if I just apply and Seek, I need to get to the...
It was a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah.
I think obviously I tried the Seek approach and I tried a few other, of those recruitment sort of websites. I spoke to a couple of recruiters in the space as well to try and find some way in. And it's difficult to find ways to circumvent the process, right? When a lot of these, especially larger companies, advertise on Seek, it can be very disconnected from the actual people, right? They're often sort of HR managers posting ads online. And then, even if you get onto the HR manager, they just say, oh, apply online. Oh, we've got an ad online, just apply. So it's really hard. And I think the persistence is probably where it's at. I've managed to get onto a few decision makers through the process. And it is that persistence where you just keep trying. You've got to be, the sort of the squeaky wheel, I guess, on everyone. And eventually one will stick, I think is sort of the idea that I took to it. I keep trying.
Is the recruitment, you got me thinking, and I've thought about this for a while, is the recruitment process flawed? If you look at it and how you've been hiring now, how has that experience you had shaped how you now hire for your team?
Yeah, no, I think it definitely is flawed. I think we've moved very heavily to this Seek concept where it's just one big database. Everyone just, dumps on there and it feels very impersonal.
Yeah.
As you were saying, I now do some recruiting for the business and go through the same process that I was subjected to on the other side. And I understand, why it's so hard to get through. And I've found that some of the people who have been most successful in securing interviews at the very least with me are the ones who are kind of annoying, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
They send me a message on LinkedIn and then they send me a message on, they find my email address because it's everywhere and, they find ways to contact me. And then I look because I'm like, who keeps contacting me? Why am I getting these messages from these people? And I'm like, well, it shows initiative, right? They're clearly interested in the position.
Yeah.
And initiative and sort of that drive is a really important part when it comes to finding good candidates. So it definitely has molded the way that I look at candidates coming forward.
Okay, so when you go to reviewing the applicants, I know you recently hired someone from an IT background, so I'm super interested to understand, when you looked at her background, what are some of the things you're looking for? So if people are tailoring their resumes to make a transition, what are some of the things you're looking for when you're reviewing?
I think I didn't start by looking at their background. I think that I had in sort of the intake interview process that I hired this young lady, we interviewed about 20 people, I think, in this one. And I started by not looking at people's backgrounds. I sort of ignored their employment history and their qualifications section of their resumes. I was more interested in sort of the way they presented themselves and sort of the things that they wanted to achieve rather than what they've already done. Because I think that's sort of one of the key parts when it comes to transitioning. You know, things you've already done don't always sort of outline exactly what you're going to be able to achieve. And it's really hard for someone, I don't come from an IT background. So when I look at all this IT experience, it meant very little to me on the resume. You know, there was a whole bunch of coding things and there was all, you know, it doesn't really make any sense to me. And I don't know how to make that necessarily apply to spaces that I want this person to work in. So I didn't find that part of it that useful. I think what I was looking for was someone who was driven, who was keen to learn, and when it comes to sort of adapting them into your workspace and adapting those skills into your workspace, it's more up to that person. So you've got to find someone who can actually find a way to change their own skill set and adapt their own skill set into what you're trying to produce in your business. So I think that's one of the great things about diversity, just generally, is the people who bring in the diversity will find ways to bring their own sort of nuances to any work that you actually have for them. And that's sort of where I was looking for, someone who would bring that and someone who could find a way to bring that.
And you were saying to me once before, so you'll only spend a few seconds reading the summary. So you'll look at what they say in the summary about where they want to head, because you've hit the nail on the head about something that I see is you don't want someone that's ready for their next role when they're coming into your role. So you kind of want someone that's, you know, 80% or less there, so you can develop that 20% and retain them. Because if you look at somebody that's ready to do 2 roles up and they apply for your role, how excited and engaged are they going to be in what you're offering? Yeah. So I think adaptability is like this new super skill. Like, look at the world we're living in now. We have to adapt to AI, to technology, to changing industry conditions, supply chain increases, all that sort of stuff every day.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is a huge changing space for us. I think traditionally construction has been a little bit slow on the uptake for change, but I think there are so many new things coming through now, and the young people effectively are the drivers of change. And as we see a lot of these people come into the space, they have new ways of doing things, some of which I don't fully understand because I'm slightly older than them. But, you know, I can't wait to see where we end up here in the future. It's going to be really exciting.
So what are some of the challenges with bringing people from different backgrounds into the construction industry? And there's definitely good parts, but what are the challenges for you as a leader that you've experienced?
Yeah, no, definitely a lot of challenges. I think, you know, for a lot of the positions that we're looking at where we bring someone in who doesn't have any construction background at all, trying to get them across the line in understanding just the basic concepts that we sort of work with is something that does present a lot of challenges. It does mean a lot more hands-on sort of upskilling sort of the candidates that come on board. I spent quite a lot of time with all of the sort of candidates and other cadets and other trainees and things that we bring on to try and build the core skill set that you would sort of generally expect someone who has got at least some background in construction would already have.
Yeah.
So there is a lot more of an investment from a sort of a time investment when it comes to upskilling these people. But at the same time, you know, there are, I don't want to sort of, you know, say it's all horrible, and it does take a lot of time because there is some significant benefits. You know, you'll find the more time you spend with a lot of these candidates or a lot of these trainees, they bring new ideas to the table just during their training. We're like, you say, this is a process we normally follow. This is the outcomes we want to achieve. And if you give them the space to find a way to the outcome, they can often bring some new methods that, you know, either more efficient or just generally better outcomes because they have a different perspective on how to achieve that task. So.
I'm glad you touched on that because I want to explore that. How do you as a leader encourage that innovation? Because I feel like you mentioned before construction has been traditionally seen as quite a slow-moving industry. How do you encourage that space where as a leader, they're new to the sector, that they feel like they can innovate and give you ideas and input?
Yeah, I think this one's a bit tricky. I think it's a cultural thing more than anything when it comes to the business as a whole. You know, there's a process that I'm very open with most of these people that come through the door about sort of how I want to achieve something and, what my expectations are for that, and giving them sort of a bit of space to try and, test things. And, failure is not the end of the world, right? As long as we're sort of catching our issues before they go too far, failure is sort of a great tool for learning. So that mentality, taking that mentality through to the team and showing them that, you can make mistakes and you can try something new and not have the desired outcome. And, there's no punishment for that, because I think that's something a lot of people who come into this space feel like there is going to be some level of punishment for making a mistake. So they just stick to the way that, things have always been done because that's the way they were told to do it. But I think it's sort of coming from the air services background, there was a big push for what they called the just culture, which is this, own up to your mistakes. There isn't really a punishment process. It's, there was a mistake here. Why did the mistake happen? And how can we correct it? And it becomes a collaborative approach. And I think that that's something I bring from my previous experience into a new environment. And I quite like the concept of the just culture. And I think that's a culture that does encourage innovation and development, because people feel like they can be more open about the mistakes they've made, and then we can work as a team on how to resolve them. And sometimes those resolutions come from left of field because it is collaborative. And, the people who made the mistakes are more likely to see how that happened and what things they could have done to improve it.
So another question I have around your transition. So you've talked about how you've helped other people transition and some of the things you look for, but what are some of the things that surprised you in construction? So when you came over, were there some things that were really different for you to get your head around?
Yeah, I think one of the probably the biggest surprises was sort of the complexity of managing people, because that's really what it comes down to in a project management position. It does sound a lot like we're building things all day and, it's all out there on tools, but it's actually a people management job more than anything. Often we have quite a lot of subcontractors and there's a lot of parties and things involved. The clients have a lot of representatives and things. So it's actually around managing people more than actually managing construction. You've got to line things up and, obviously build stuff. But at the end of the day, more of my time is spent managing the expectations of people.
Yeah.
And that was a big surprise to me, I think, coming across. I sort of assumed being over here, I would just be sort of pointing at all the different things we need to build. There's a wall over there, let's put that together. But really, that's only probably 20% of the job. 80% of the job is sort of liaising with all the different clients and all the other stakeholders, which there are so many. So that was probably the biggest surprise for me in the shift.
Where do you think you were underestimated? So when you came in, obviously, and we've shared this before, you took a significant pay cut. And I want people listening to know that, because I do talk about this all the time. There is sometimes you've got to take a couple of steps back to take many steps forward. So when you made the transition, where were you kind of underestimated?
Oh, that is a very good question. I think I was pretty fortunate in the way that I sort of entered the team, where my boss did give me quite a lot of responsibility. And I think he always takes the approach of keep giving until you break. And then that's the line where he feels like he needs to take over. I'd like to think that I haven't broken yet. So, but I think that for me, the area that I was probably underestimated in most was my ability to manage people. It's a skill that I didn't always have growing up. I was a bit of a recluse through my schooling years and didn't really get on with a lot of people. But I think that in more recent years, it's a skill that I've sort of been forced to develop for a lot of different reasons. And I think a lot of people underestimate that in me, especially people who have known me for a very long time. But so I think early on, the areas that I was probably given the least sort of rein was this client contact sort of stuff early in the piece. Now I can't get rid of the clients because they all want to talk to me. So, it's definitely an area that I was probably underestimated in the most.
And that's interesting. And I want to unpack something a little bit. So you would describe yourself as more probably introverted in terms of when you were growing up, was more introverted and recluse type personality?
Yeah, definitely.
I think sometimes we have this misconception that only extroverts and those people that are very out there and outgoing are able to lead, because that's who we see, that's the squeaky wheel. But some of the best leaders I have worked with and worked for are introverted and really listen and observe and are able to make strong analysis because they can weigh up, problem solve, and, look at all the facts. When you look at how you've had to adapt to becoming a leader of so many different stakeholders, clients, people that you lead, subcontractors, what skills did you need to develop? Well, you'd been a recluse and then you've come into, you've managed McDonald's as well. So I'm sure this journey started long before the role you're in now. But what did you learn you needed to do to achieve the goals?
Yeah, I think I do agree that introverted people do make very good leaders.
Yeah.
I know quite a few. I think they're some of the best leaders that I've ever sort of worked with. Unfortunately for me, I think I've definitely overcompensated and I'm more on the extroverted side these days, which is a bit of a strange thing to go through that transition, because it is quite a long way away from where I was growing up. So for me, I think it was a lot of, I saw extroverts in leadership positions and I saw these people doing things and I copied. It was more of a monkey see, monkey do sort of scenario for me, which looking back, I wish I could do it differently. But now here I am and I've molded into the person that I am, so I'm stuck with this. But no, I think that some of the sort of key takeaways are I think the best leaders and all of the best skills from leadership that I've seen are the ability to listen to people. It's such a critical skill, which I think is missed a lot of the time. A lot of people see leadership as an idea where, you need to take control and take charge and push, ideas and processes forward. When I like to view leadership a little bit differently, where it's actually very collaborative. It's about bringing people with you and not sort of pushing these ideas forward. There are times, obviously, where a leader has to push because otherwise things get stuck and they stagnate. But I think most of the time you can get through if you show trust in people, and people will perform better than you realise when they're given the opportunity.
So you said there were things you wish you'd done differently. What are those things looking back now?
Look, I think that I wish that, I stayed maybe a little more true to my original self. I think that, maybe wish I did differently is maybe a little bit of a strong term. I think that I reflect on my past and some of the things that I did to feel like I needed to fit in and become, who I thought I needed to be in the future. And they changed me. So as I said, I've become quite extroverted comparatively to the way that I was growing up. And I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing, and I probably wouldn't change it. But, when I think back to my younger self, I would look to who I am now and think that's a completely different person. And, I guess there's a small amount of sadness for my young self having changed so significantly over the years. But, it comes with pros and cons, and I'm not the sort of person to reflect on the past in a negative way. Things change us all the time, and sometimes, for the better, sometimes for the worse, but whoever you are at the time is who you are. So,
how's AI going to change the industry, do you think? Are you starting to see rumblings or shifts in the industry with AI yet?
Yeah, I'm seeing a little bit of it. There is a big shift in a lot of my larger sort of clients moving towards more tech-based systems. A small part of me hopes for a big change with AI. I think there's a lot of tasks that we do in project management that could definitely be replaced by AI, and I'm looking forward to doing less of those tasks. So, I think there's a big space here, and I think we're still early days when it comes to AI. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and I think that we never really can remove the person. It's certainly not at the stage we are now with AI, because there's just so many other things to consider that AI just doesn't consider. So I'm excited for the future of technology, especially in the construction space. I think that, improved efficiencies in construction are going to be a fantastic boon for the whole industry. we already have a skills shortage in the space. Trying to fill the skills shortage is going to be very difficult. So hopefully AI can fill some of those spaces for us. And, we're only looking to build more and more every year. So I don't see that sort of being resolved by just sheer force of will. So I think that technology will play a significant role for all of us.
I want to learn more around your, I guess, goals and vision for the future. So you've gone into project management now. What do you see this is possible over the next 5 to 10 years for you?
I don't quite know. I think that I'm still exploring the space. Obviously, shifting industries is a big change to begin with. But I am looking forward to continuing my journey through this space. I work with a really great company that has only been established here in Queensland for a really short period of time. It's been about 2.5 years. And, nationally, the firm's been around for 20 plus years. And but the Queensland space is quite new. So there's an enormous opportunity for growth. And I'm effectively part of this early team, which does let me play a pretty significant role in the development of the business. We spoke briefly earlier about culture, and I think that one of the things that I bring to the team is this culture, and I have a lot of support from the director of the Queensland branch that, he does see this culture as a really important part of the business. So I'm excited to see the business grow and develop under the sort of the leadership team that we're building. I really look forward to playing a more significant role in the business as we move down the line. And in our last 12 months, we've probably tripled sort of the work that we're doing. It is fantastic. I'm hoping to see more and more of that in the future. And as we branch out, we've got a few clients that we work for predominantly, but I'm already starting to see some of the branching that we're doing. So watch this space. We're going to be everywhere soon. So that's my goals and hopes for the future.
How have you, I'm interested in this as well. You've become more extroverted over time. I obviously came across you at a NAWIC event as well. So National Association for Women in Construction, you were coming along networking at the small business event, which is awesome. I'm interested in client growth. What strategies have worked for you to grow? Like tripling your business is quite significant, particularly where we haven't had a massively buoyant market, and maybe we have in some sectors, but overall there's been some challenges in the industry. What has worked for you in that space?
Yeah, I think in this space, we've been pretty fortunate. Obviously, sort of branching into Queensland, we have quite strong relationships nationally with some of the clients we work with.
Yeah.
So that played probably the key role in the growth potential here in Queensland. I think bringing on some, key players is probably where it is. I think once I joined the team and a few other people joined the team underneath me, it gave us a lot more capacity. And for us, it was very outcomes focused. And, for the client, they got exactly what they wanted from us, which was something they weren't really used to having from some of the other people who serviced their needs prior to our arrival here in Queensland. So I think that's been a really great opportunity for us, is to really bring some of our knowledge base from our national firm here to Queensland and then sort of customize it for exactly what the client needs here. So I think that's probably been the biggest driving factor for us when it comes to growth. I think in the coming 12 to 24 months, the next driver for us will be sort of capacity issues on our own end, effectively. I'm constantly looking to bring new people on board. And at the moment, I've got too much to do. And, that sort of puts a big limiter on what we can actually achieve. But, I don't believe there is a shortage of people looking for work to be done here in Queensland. So it's there. It just needs the right people to do it. And, I think that one of the advantages we have in our business, being a bit of a smaller business, is to really tailor what the client needs to our actual outcomes. So we can actually achieve things very specifically to the client's desires. And they are very specific, some of these desires from the client. So it's a very difficult space to get into as a larger organization, because you don't always have that flexibility to really change on the fly. So I think that's probably one of the other key factors for us when it comes to driving our growth.
Is what clients want sort of changing? Because we've even seen this in our space. I think more, customized solutions, more high touch. I think as we move more to AI and technology, what stands out is those businesses that have the agility to be able to listen to what the client wants and deliver an outcome, a product or a solution that aligns with their, needs. Have you noticed with that small business mentality and that agility, your ability to perhaps partner with the client in a different way, less variations and surprises and stuff? I'm interested from a contracting point of view in construction, what your values and ethos is around how you deliver what the client wants.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. Some of the people that we work with are it's a bit of a unique space when it comes to sort of the contracting aspect. We've formed contracts with our clients for all of the work that we do, but we rely very heavily on a relationship that we build with the client.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than sort of resting on a contract and saying, oh, the contract says this, the contract says that, we try and build a good relationship with the client and achieve the goals. We have a better understanding of what their actual outcomes are, the outcomes that they want from a project. And then even though the contract might not necessarily specify, this is what we want you to do to get this outcome, we can sort of on the fly change how we actually achieve that outcome, because things change, and as you probably know, in construction, there's all sorts of different barriers that you don't always know about until you get in front of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
You remove the wall and all of a sudden there's, all sorts of things hidden away. But as long as we sort of continue to focus on the outcomes the client's after,
mm-hmm.
and I think that's where, for us, the big focus is, where we need to understand the client's desires prior to actually even having a contract. And then the contract can say, a very rough, these are the desired outcomes for the work. They might even be very specific about the work that we need to do. But what they actually want isn't necessarily reflected in the contract. So I think that finding a way to ride the line between the contract and the outcomes for us has been the most successful aspect of it. It does present a lot of challenges because at the end of the day, the contract is the document that binds us to the work and binds the client to the outcomes. But that's probably where our flexibility has been the most valuable, because we're talking about often multi-million-dollar contracts, but they're not so challenging in a way that we can't sort of mold the contract around the actual outcomes. I think that being incredibly rigid in the process, and obviously for larger scale projects, we probably would be more rigid than smaller scale ones. But the relationships that we build from, taking a small hit here and, not getting the exact sort of, dues, I guess, from the contract that we were expecting, actually plays a much larger role across the business over a larger period of time. So, it's probably not the best system when it comes to managing it. And I think that this is one of the challenges that all contractors face, right? How closely do you follow the contract? And at the end of the day, the outcomes that are achieved might not be reflected in the original contract. And is the client going to be that pleased when you finish the work to not actually have what they wanted, even though the contract specified that's what they wanted to get? So this is probably the main reason for our sort of advantages in this space, is that flexibility for us to say, look, the contract says this, but let's modify this now on the fly. Some of our projects are as short as, a few weeks, and some go for 6 months. But once you're sort of halfway through, changing contracts and changing sort of the outcomes that you're sort of contracted to can be a very time-consuming process. So our ability to sort of just adjust on the fly and then sort of work it out later is probably the thing that's been the most advantageous to us.
It's really interesting too, because we work with a lot of commercial people and contracts administrators. And one of the things that can make or break their job is dependent on the culture of the company they work for, whether it's more adversarial, whether it's more, hey, quote them really cheap and then hit them with as many variations as we can, whether it's, more of a relationship-based way of delivering work and collaborative contracting, we're definitely seeing a shift in not only what clients want, but where people want to work too. Because I think the culture that you create with your clients becomes the culture of the company, and the company of the business, because who are you dealing with every day? Clients, right? And it is, I agree, a definite a balance. I always find we're building a pool, and what I find really fascinating is we went to 5 different pool builders. Only one called. Only one of them called to chat to me. Yeah. Everyone else just put out a price. And I mean, I get it. The industry it's tough, but I gave the contract to the person that called. Yep. And I still think at the end of the day, I'll always do that. It's not just about the price. And I think more and more when you have that very first phone call or interaction to someone, it sets the tone for what that relationship's going to be like. And so it's interesting. I wonder if it's going to shift around the industry over the next few years. I wonder if that relationship-based, and we talk more around, with QMC and a lot of events, they're talking about more collaborative contracting being the way forward. Do you think that clients are going to shift more towards relationship-based long-term, or is it going to come back to the price?
Look, I would like to think it would shift to relationship-based, and I think that I'm not sure. I think that I see a lot of shifts in the spaces that I work away from relationship-based and more to price.
Yeah.
And, but it's also the issue that I find is that it's an upfront price that they look at. Some of the clients that we work with have outsourced a lot of their sort of cost management and things like that, which sort of puts a bit of a disconnect between what the client actually wants and, what the cost manager is trying to achieve, which is the cheapest outcome. But at the same time, they might get a price and they might look at their contracts and they're ironclad. They're like, oh, this is what our contract says. And, these are the outcomes that we want from that. But in reality, what the client actually wants when you get down to the work is different to what the contract is. So in order to achieve the contract outcomes, they end up fighting with, other builders. And, it becomes a very costly exercise, not only from the variations perspective that they might receive, but also from just the time that it consumes around trying to get the outcome that they actually wanted in the first place. So while we don't do that, and I like to believe that that's the driver for our growth, and it will continue to be the driver for our growth, I'm doubtful. I think that it's a bit of back and forth always. There'll be a wave of, let's pick the people who are right for the job rather than the cheapest price, because it will actually come out cheaper at the end of the day. You get a better quality product, the relationship's good, that they're going to fix their problems, and you're going to get the outcomes that you want without having to sacrifice additional time and money or even bring in another builder later to come and fix up the problems. But I just don't see it, unfortunately, just yet. Certainly not in my space anyway, as this shift towards, professional cost management and outsourcing, this cost management process does continue to sort of increase. I have some general concerns in that space.
I hope, and I know this sounds really, I can't put it any other way, but one of the things that we sometimes see is sometimes clients have to see that the way that they've done it or tried to do it isn't working. And sometimes it might mean a client tries going down, they've got the cost management path, they get a solution, they're really unhappy with the delivery, they're really unhappy with the result, and then they come back to the relationship way of working because they go, okay, we tried cheapest price, and here's where we sit at the end of the day. We've got a project that's been delivered, not what we wanted. We probably paid more for it, and potentially a lot more. So I don't know. Maybe I am an eternal optimist, and I try to feel like, I try to look at it like maybe it's the long game. Maybe if you're focused on the relationship, you might not win the small wins. You might miss out on a priced project here and there, or someone that does it cheap and dirty. There's no other ways I can describe it. But then my hope is, at the end of the day, people do believe in a quality product, and people do set out to, go to the market and get what they wanted at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I'm also optimistic. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't continue to do things
Same.
on this relationship.
I'm in the same thing with recruitment. Everyone's always like, I can get it cheaper, around the corner, and they'll just flick me a CV. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk in a year when that person's left, right? So I have the same challenges.
Yeah, no, I do think it is a challenge. I think that the reason I'm slightly less optimistic around this aspect of it is that the organizations seem to be getting bigger, and bigger organizations are harder to manage, and it's easier to sort of outsource, and relationships are hard to maintain in a large organization.
Yeah.
And some of the clients that I work for are very large.
Yes.
So they have people in there, and we do have relationships with those people, but those people will leave at some point, and the next person will come along who we don't have that relationship with, and it's a bit of a reset every time. So I think that for them, it's easier to say, hey, let's just, outsource this aspect of it. The work will get done, it'll all be great. We'll get what we want because we don't have that relationship, or we don't know what we're getting into. And sometimes it can be hard to maintain that over a long period of time. So I'd like to believe, I am optimistic that this will continue to build up. And, my hope is that, the people who do move into these senior leadership positions within the organization will come from within, and they will be people we've already built relationships with already who are in more junior positions. But it only takes sort of one major shift in an organization, which, they do refreshers and shifts all the time. Some of my clients have done that recently, removing very large numbers of people from the organization is a bit of a reset. And they do this every, 5-10 years where they realize things have ballooned, and they're like, all right, time to bring it all back to basics. And they bring in a new person to just run the whole thing, strip it back down. So, while I am optimistic that the relationships will continue to play a significant role, my fear is that, when, the head of the snake is removed.
I agree that it's a challenge with navigating relationships, particularly as organisations grow. So my question to you as well is your strategy going to change going forward as well, or how are you going to, roll with those changes?
At this stage, I don't see the strategy changing. I think that in the short term, the relationship system does work. The fear is around the sort of long term. What happens when there is a major shift in my client's organization, and all of a sudden, the 5 or 10 years work that I've put in is gone. That's when it'll be, we're going to have to come back. We're going to have to reset and restart the relationship process. And I think once you sort of come back to that beginning, my hope is we will have a number of relationships with a number of clients, and they're not all going to do the same thing at the same time. And then, the sort of the rebuilding relationships part, it does sort of make things a bit more challenging. You sort of have to start from the beginning, go back to basics, find ways to reduce cost, give them sort of the thing that they're looking for. And generally under those changes, it's who's the cheapest. And sometimes you have to sort of take the hit, find the cheap way to do something, still produce a good outcome for the client, but just restart that relationship building process.
Absolutely. And find the way you can provide value in the budget constraints, and I think that that's very prevalent at the moment, working with, the size of the business, what their budgets are, and being able to deliver, a first-class service within their budget is going to, I agree, certainly be key. You've become a dad and you've got a 6-month-old. I do want to ask you a question. How did your view of the working world and that landscape change for you after becoming a father?
Quite significantly. I think almost nothing else matters, I suppose, just almost overnight. Obviously I love my job, and I think that it's really important as not only a tool for, my own well-being, but also one for my children as well, right? They see the work that their parents do, even if they don't necessarily know what I'm doing. And he's 6 months old, so he has no idea. But at some point, he'll see, sort of the drive that I put into my work and the enjoyment that I get out of it. And I hope that he will, strive for the same things in the future. I think it's very hard to describe, what it's like to have children unless people have had them prior. I certainly could only imagine what it would feel like. And then now, I'm stuck in a very strange place.
So with all the work you're doing now, what's the legacy that you hope to leave in the industry, and obviously personally too?
Yeah, I do hope that over the course of my career to really drive home some of these key sort of cultural shifts. I know there are a lot of organisations that are following similar suit, so I'm certainly not unique in this space. But I do feel like it does take every single person to contribute to this, more collaborative and, as I said, sort of just culture approach, right? I want, all members of my team to feel like they have, the ability to contribute without any sort of negative aspects. And I think that, this is the shift I want to see. I want to see people, really empowered in this space. And that's something that I will continue to drive for my entire career. And, that's the legacy I hope to leave, that, my organisation is a standing sort of a beacon, I suppose, for the right way of doing things, good relationships, great people and a great culture.
Love that. I really do like your ethos around leadership. I really think it's needed. And I think, people want to work in good cultures. So as much as you're going to need to hire your team, I say it to people all the time, create the culture, the people will come. And the people will come that align with that culture too, if you can get it right. We're going to go into the rocket round. Fun. It's just a bit terrifying. It's just a few quick questions just to learn a little bit more around you. First one, coffee or wine?
Oof. It used to be wine. Now I have a child, so it's coffee.
It's caffeinated all the way, absolutely. Yeah. And favourite holiday destination?
I love Japan. I've been probably about 8 or 9 times.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I did study international relations at uni and did a languages as part of that as well, where I studied Japanese. So, I sort of had a bit of a kick-off to begin with, but I absolutely love the country and highly recommend to everyone, which is it's a very popular travel destination these days.
My son's obsessed with manga and anime, so we're definitely going to need to go to Japan.
Yeah.
Do you know about manga and anime?
A little bit, but I'm more of a cultural sort of root person. But no, I am aware of it. It's not really my steam, not these days anyway. I did try to use it a little bit to learn Japanese during my learning periods, but these days it's
He can speak full sentences in Japanese and he's 10 from watching anime, so it's crazy. It's crazy the way kids absorb and learn knowledge these days too.
Yeah, no, well, I do advise slightly against that when going to Japan, because it's a very crass use of the language in the anime.
Okay, so thank you.
It doesn't always come across the best.
Doesn't translate well?
No.
We could be the rude Australians with this 10-year-old speaking.
I'm sure they would all love it. Any attempt to speak Japanese in Japan is greatly applauded by all Japanese people. So.
That's awesome. And cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Okay, awesome. What podcast do you listen to?
Oh, that's a good one. I listen to, probably a bit of a variety. Obviously this one
thanks.
Number one. But I quite like The Minefield on the ABC, which is it's a moral philosophy podcast.
Ooh, good.
Yes. I don't know why, but I'm a bit of a fan of philosophy, and, moral philosophy is always a fun one.
I like podcasts that make me think a bit deeper, if you can just take that time to reflect on what you're doing, because that's what's so great. Podcasts can just land in your living room or in your car, and it's like that time that's normally dead time. You're just sitting there, and that's what I love about it. You can take that time to reflect on what you're doing, where you're heading, all that sort of stuff.
No, exactly.
And what makes you feel like you're home?
That is a great question. I've lived in a lot of different places and moved a lot. I think probably the only thing that really makes me feel like home would be my wife and child. So wherever they go with me, and I feel comfortable. So
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. How can people connect with you, stay in touch with you? What's the best platform or way for them to do that?
You can probably find me on LinkedIn. It's probably the best way. If you're fortunate enough to hunt down my emails, you can probably find those somewhere as well. But LinkedIn's probably the best way to connect with me.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Luke, for coming on the podcast. Absolutely love the discussion. Appreciate your time.
No, thanks, Lauren. Appreciate it.
If this episode gave you new insights, don't let them go to waste. Take action, apply them. And if you want more insider strategies from the best in construction and infrastructure, make sure to subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the leaders who open the most doors aren't waiting for opportunities, they're building them.